Ronnie, welcome.
Thank you.
Wow, dude, what the heck did you do today? I can only imagine. I really can only imagine. Where'd you come from?
That's a loaded question.
I know, that's why I asked.
Mm-hmm. Where I kind of like actually where was I born? Where was I raised?
Where'd you come from today?
Today I came from I came from my house, which is my office / physiotherapy office practice. So I had a handful of neuromuscular release therapy sessions, working on a rebrand, a launch of my website and podcast platforms, and what else did I do?
Yeah. You woke up.
I worked out,
You're a healthy guy.
Yeah.
So what'd you have for breakfast today?
Water.
Mm-hmm. Water.
Yeah, I do intermittent fasting. So I do a lot of free-form amino acids, electrolytes, different supplements, drink water. I had a gynostemma tea, which is a Chinese herb. And then at some point I had 8 eggs.
Yeah.
And
hard-boiled.
No, scrambled.
Scrambled. Yeah.
And that was about it.
That sounds pretty good. Before we get fully rolling on this, we also have to introduce our lovely co-host. This is Kaylee.
Hi, guys.
Diane Bendel.
Happy Wednesday.
The UK.
So excited to be here with both of you.
Great to see you, Kaylee.
So excited to be back in Austin, Texas.
Yeah. Happy to have you. Yeah. So, Ronnie, let's paint the picture for the folks. Right? We're going to talk a little bit about the present. Then we're going to throw it way back. We're going to end off with the cherry on top and talk about where you're going in life.
Great.
What kind of impact you want to make, right? Because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got these building blocks, these pivotal moments in their lives that ultimately built them to who they are today. And a lot of it takes a lot of perseverance and overcoming great challenges. Yeah. So that's how we're going to help people that listen to this, to let them know that they're not alone.
Yep. And
to let them know that there's hope, because they can become somebody like yourself, right? Somebody that's well loved in the neighborhood, in the community, that's appreciated by the people that you know, right? So what have you got going on as far as, let's talk about business for a second.
Sure.
What have you been doing to generate income and, pay your bills and stuff like that? What have you been doing?
Yeah, so for the last 15 years, I've been a transformational holistic health coach. So many things in that realm, but to keep it simple, right now my primary focus as far as helping clients and patients is my neuromuscular release therapy practice, which I like to liken to somatic shamanic surgery. And you've done a session, and you've also done a session. You've done 2 sessions.
2 sessions.
Yeah, so that's a whole deep dive. It's basically one of the most advanced somatic therapy, physiotherapy practices, modalities in the world. And so that's something that I've been championing, promoting, pioneering in a kind of way, just sharing through the community and all the people that I'm connected to, and really made that my full-time therapy practice. So that's my primary focus, but I have a lot of other things. I have, my books and my podcast and my educational platforms that I've been building for almost 15 years, ranging from all things to do with holistic health, natural nutrition, advanced supplementation, what the kids on the block now would call biohacking, but I call just bio-optimization, or just really like total human optimization. Optimizing the physical body, but also optimizing our psychology, optimizing our emotional intelligence, our spiritual development, all the facets and dimensions of the human experience. But it always starts and ends with the physical body, because we're in physical bodies. And most people know more about their cars, their apps, their phones, their iPads than they do about the most advanced biotechnology, which is this physical body. And so most of my life has been focusing on how do I train, how do I perform as a semi-professional athlete, as a competitive martial artist. And, I know we're going to go back into way back in time.
Maybe.
But my focus has really been about peak performance from a mental and physical pursuit or perspective. And so I always start with the physical body, end with the physical body, but there's a lot of other dimensions that make up the human experience. So that's really what my work is about. It's about total human optimization.
Wow. Total. Do you have do you not like the term biohacking?
Well, it's just not accurate, because it's kind of cookie cutter, because the idea that you're going to hack your biology means that something's wrong with the body. It's like something's broken, something needs to be fixed. There's a flaw. There's a design flaw in this perfectly designed body. And so I don't like it because it's really not accurate. And there's an interesting nuance to that too, because with the biohacking community, most people are very tech centric and they're very supplement focused. It's like external things to fix an internal condition. And a lot of times it's actually psycho-emotional that people are kind of compensating, or they're numbing or sedating with all these external things, but there's a deeper issue that they need to address that they're covering up. So what I like to just use the word bio-optimization, because then it brings in this idea that the body is actually perfectly designed, but our world is not. And the pollution in our world, the food that we've been fed through genetic modification and hybridization and all these extreme diets and all these things outside of us that are actually placing a burden on the body, that's actually the real issue. So we need to detox the body, we need to cleanse the body, and we need to learn how to properly nourish the body with what actually works for the body. And then the body actually starts to optimize itself for the particular function, i.e. the purpose. Say if you're an athlete, you have a particular function, you're training for that, you're eating for your purpose and your function. So if you can actually marry the two ideas of let's say bio-optimization, physical health, performance, with what it is that you want in your life, what do you want to perform for, what are your goals, aspirations, dreams, visions for your life, if you can marry those two ideas together, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, your body will start to optimize itself naturally for that form and function. So that's kind of a little bit of a different philosophy that I have.
I think in order to apply that, somebody would need to know where they're going, though.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah.
How do you have that conversation with somebody?
It's a great question. It's actually a much deeper question than you might think, because it is a conversation. It's a bit of an exploration, because if somebody doesn't know what they want, they don't know where they're going, or at least they don't know where they want to go, then you do kind of have to backtrack a little bit. Because if you don't know where your now is, you got to kind of backtrack to figure out, how did you get here? How did you get to this moment in time? And a lot of people don't want to do the regression work. They don't want to do the reflective work for all manner of reasons. But if you don't do that, then your next now, from now, what we call the future, what we're putting off for the future, eventually that future will become now. And if we don't change something, meaning if we don't go back into the software, if we don't go back into, our childhood or whatever the imprints, the pivotal moments in our life that were forks in the road, if we don't go back to those things and maybe reconcile some sort of trauma or imprint that we had, or the addictions that we're perpetuating in our life that are just kind of masking these internal disconnects or tension that we feel, stress. If we don't do that work, then we're just going to kind of disassociate from the present moment, and that's just going to lead to further problems in the future. So what I'm essentially saying is that, to your question, if you don't do that kind of work, and if you don't really get clear on, you may not know where you're going right now, but you have to have a desire to want to know. I think that's the best place to start that conversation, to kind of open it up.
In your experience, what are some ways that people can tap into or do the regression or the reflection? What are some ways that actually work?
Right. It's interesting. What's coming to me is actually not so much about the modalities, the therapies, the strategies to do even past regression work. It's actually how to get still in this moment. Because if people, the reason why one may not know where they want to go is not actually because they don't know. It's because of every present moment preceding this one, they've never actually been truly present.
Never? Rare.
I'm not gonna say never, but it's a pattern. Unique. It's a pattern. Like we might achieve moments of stillness, right? But not as a felt experience predominantly. And what I mean by that is that eventually when you start to pause and you let go of the you kind of release the let me go this way, like release the need for approval, release all these external hooks that a lot of us in society get, desires that are inauthentic, right? That are based on other people's expectations, the need for approval, the need for significance. A lot of times people are habituating to unconscious expectations placed upon them that are not authentic to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So to answer your question, a lot of my work is actually helping somebody get really present to the now, and more so what's happening in their body in the now, to feel their nervous system, to feel the internal tension, to feel the contractions in their body, to feel the coping impulses that lead them to, wanting to take a substance or take a stimulant or go on their phone excessively or play out whatever patterns that are actually causing them to disassociate from their physical body in the now. So practices like meditation become extremely important. Breath work, yoga, even working out, to the degree that it's not like an escape strategy. It's actually helping you develop yourself, because it's an empowering process to lead you to becoming a greater version of yourself. It's not just to check out because, I have a lot of stress and anger issues and whatnot. So that's kind of been my focus. And through the neuromuscular release therapy work I do, it causes somebody to become so intimately connected with what's going on in their body. And then we can start to flush out the chemical memory of trauma that's been causing them to be in a holding pattern. And then they have better access to whatever it is that they're disconnected from, because the hardware has the RAM drive, the space in their software set has been released. So there's more space, right? And that's the last thing I'll say on this is I think people feel very overwhelmed. They feel just burdened. They feel like there's a weight on their shoulder, but whether it's conscious or unconscious. And so they need to lift that weight. They need to release the pressure. And usually that pressure is coming from outside and it's being placed upon them, or they're just taking it on because they think that that's what they need to do.
Ronnie, who doesn't feel that pressure? Can you name somebody by name that you've met?
Well, I couldn't tell you anyone else's experience, I can tell you for me, I feel that more and more these days. But I also come from an upbringing of feeling intense pressure. And through my martial arts background, through my athletic background, through my pursuit of philosophy and meditation, because I was raised in a martial arts type of environment. So I had a lot of these tools, but I also, in my my family upbringing, I had a lot of setbacks, a lot of developmental glitches, you might say. So I had...
In your family upbringing.
In my family upbringing.
Developmental glitches.
Yeah, like I never had my father. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and my mother was in and out a lot because she had her own thing. She was like 27 when she had me, and she had a lot of things that she was dealing with. So I spent a lot of time by myself. I had to grow up very quickly. And so that actually created an incredible amount of resilience within me, but it also created a situation where I think emotionally I had to reclaim or reconnect to certain parts of my childhood innocence that I didn't fully, that weren't fully expressed when I was younger.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I'm surprised. I think that if you asked some other people in the public if they know somebody that doesn't feel pressure, that is at peace, etc., I think that people might try to give it a shot and name some names. I don't know much about this, to be quite.
I do have some friends that I can think of that do. I have one friend. His name's Joyous. He's a serial entrepreneur. Has a very dynamic life. Like you would think, like, oh wow, he's so active and is just like all over the place and doing all these things, and that's true. But I've observed him recently, and he actually is. He's so active, so dynamic. There's so many things happening. He's like, talking to billionaires and all these business deals. And yet he's in a state of such zen and such centeredness while all this stuff is going on. He has a family, 2 kids, a wife, people are coming in and out of the house all the time. So there's a lot of things going on. It's not to say like, oh, he's just sitting and meditating all the time, but he at one point, he went through many years of being a yogi and had that training. So now there's so much going on in his world, but he's operating from a place of being at center and being at peace no matter what's going on. And I think that's kind of the piece to what you're inquiring, is that it's entirely possible to be at peace within yourself regardless of what's going on around you. And that's a process of actually learning how to regulate your nervous system, because there's always going to be things happening. Life is full. Life is going on, especially the more you're growing, the more ambition you have, the more opportunities are happening. You have a family, you fall in love, it causes you to grow, but it doesn't have to be excessively stressful. That this stress is because our nervous system is interpreting things that are happening as good, bad, negative, positive.
Ronnie, how can people learn on a practical level? Where can they sign up to learn to regulate their nervous system?
Breathing. That's where you start.
Now, Kaylee, you sent me a video on breath work the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that regulate your nervous system because you did the exercise?
Well, that was a breath work. That's a bit different to just breathing.
Breath work.
What do you think?
Yeah.
So I think if I was to breathe, then it's instantly would calm me down in a situation where you breathe, hold for 3 seconds, and breathe out. It instantly calms you down and centers you and brings you back to presence. Breath work, on the other hand, is a completely out-of-body experience for 1 hour minimum, right? Or sometimes longer. It's intense. You do that once a month. You wouldn't do that every day. Right? Am I right?
No, you're it's a perfect point. So this is a good distinction. So the practice and art of breathing it's slow, it's paced, and you're bringing oxygen and blood flow into the brain. Most people's breath is very shallow, and it's unconscious, and it's reactive. So you're training your body to be still, and you're training your body to be present, and you're training the mind to calm by bringing more oxygen to the brain. So that's one piece, is just learning how to breathe properly. The other piece that she's bringing up is breath work. Breath work is to develop resilience. It's to develop greater capacity. And so this is actually an interesting point, because you're a gym guy. You work out. You'll understand this. It's like breath work is like going to the gym, right? You're not constantly like walking around doing these like hyperventilative, breathing exercises. That actually creates temporary stress on the system, but you're increasing the voltage, you're increasing your capacity and your resilience. But you do that in windows of time, like a training exercise. So that's one piece. That's what people can do to develop greater resilience. And then the other piece is just learning how to breathe as a normal function. So for example, this is a good example. Say like I get triggered and, relationships thing happens. I can either go, and that's probably not the appropriate thing. I do that on my own time, right? So I can actually navigate, the ins and outs of life and just have more of a resilience. When I'm in a triggered state or about to be in a triggered state, when that impulse to drops me into the present moment, disassembles the reactive mind, the ego that wants to defend, project, prove, whatever, and then just softens the whole body. So now I'm actually able to be present with the person in front of me. I'm able to listen, because that's a big thing actually in our world. And this is actually, to your question, this is also part of the answer, developing the ability to listen. One of the biggest problems in our social media, dopaminergic, ADD-like world is people are consuming, people are talking, people are projecting, but they're not listening. So people like this is why I'm sure this is a great art for you. And I'm sure you can relate to what I'm saying, because this gives you the opportunity to actually listen and receive. Like I have a podcast. It's actually therapeutic for me to listen to people's story and actually practice for an hour listening. It's actually very meditative.
Yeah, my real estate coach said a good realtor is not the one that can talk to anybody. A good realtor is the one that can listen.
Isn't that like
best.
101 sales training?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Audiobooks, for example, right? I've always had that notion that have been one of the most helpful things that I've ever done is listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
Because the art of listening is invaluable.
I love audiobooks too.
Yeah.
I like going on a journey and just receiving. It's actually very like soothing to not have to read all the time. I love reading and I'm an author, but I like being able to listen and receive and just go for walks.
So Ronnie, I could be wrong here. It seems to me like breathing should have been one of those things that they taught us in elementary.
It should have been the very first thing. Very first,
one of those
especially as a child.
Elementary
Yeah.
behaviors that is so impactful. It's just a small thing that makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
You know something? I heard something on a YouTube clip the other day that talks about some of the most powerful speakers and the best CEOs and the best athletes are the ones that can breathe the best.
Yep.
So how do we learn?
Well, that was actually part of my training. So in martial arts, one of the disciplines is sitting down, meditating, and breathing. Now, this was breathwork before breathwork was a thing, but I got to learn how to sit, how to visualize, and how to just regulate myself without even really knowing that's what I was doing. And before going into a competition, you do the warm-ups and stuff, but I would, right before the competition starts, I would just zone out. And I would just play out the entire match in my head watching the floor and just play it out in my mind, right? Because the body can't tell the difference between what's happening in the mind versus what's happening in real time. And so I'd get my body primed for it, but I do it in such a relaxed state, and then when I'm in the competition, the times that I get super gassed out, I remember very clearly the times I get gassed out is when I was just super amped and like, just ready to go. First round, I'm gassed out, I'm out. But when I became more seasoned and more mature, I'd pace myself. I'd be watching what's going on. I'd kind of like play out the first round, then the second round, okay, turn it on. And that was all because I was able to breathe through it and everything would slow down. It's the same thing for life. If you're in a business situation, like I'm sure you've been in meetings with people, like maybe nerves come up. Maybe
like my first couple listing appointments, and you have a family of 6 staring at me. It's freaking intense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe you've like blacked out, just because like blood supply just like doesn't go to the brain.
Dude, can you imagine? Somebody's like, this is how I'm going to sell your house. Boom.
Right.
Adios, amigo.
But what do you do in those moments? Do
before.
you start talking excessively, or do you just pull it back and
I breathe from the power center.
Yeah,
that's where I go.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I got from a YouTube video.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Would you consider this your power center?
That is your power center. So your solar plexus is actually the power center. So a lot of people are breathing shallowly, like. So you drop it right here. You can even put your hand or your fingers right here at the solar plexus and immediately you can feel the difference. Now, here's an interesting point for people to unwind trauma.
Yeah.
So this is where your power is. We call this the gut instinct or guttural instinct.
Guttural.
Never
heard that.
I don't go with my emotions. My emotions are just reactive patterns, like bundled up energy. I'm not going with my emotions. I'm going with my gut instinct to make important decisions. So I have to come back here, and a lot of times people's fear is actually entangled right here, because you notice when you feel fear, there's this contractive response right down here, right? Ever felt that?
Yeah.
So one thing people can do is actually like press on that, especially when they get into it, they access that fear and breathe through it to unwind it and just start unwinding it. And as you unwind the contraction, what happens is an opening and expansion starts to open up. Now you have more access to your intelligentsia. You have more access to your power.
Just to clarify, this is under the bone.
That's right, yeah.
Right under the bone.
Right underneath, yeah.
Yeah.
Top of the ribcage, yep.
What can you tell us about bioenergetics?
It's a great topic. Bioenergetics, from my framework, my interpretation is that, I'll go this way with it. Bioenergy. So your body, beyond what we equate to. Okay, let's talk about like ATP, adenosine triphosphate, for all the biohacking nerds. That's how your cells produce energy. And it's like, okay, are you going to be on ketones? Are you going to be on carbohydrates? How are your body going to produce fuel from food? That's all super superficial. Once you get into intermittent fasting, then you go to another level of bioenergetics from a physiological perspective, because then you realize, oh, there's something that's turning on my energy supply that's not coming from food, right? Okay, glycogen in the liver and breaking down into sugar for metabolism. Yeah, that's fine. But that's actually really superficial. Your body is producing what's called photons or biophotons, otherwise known as light. So your cells, and this is scientifically proven, your cells are running on light frequencies as an energy supply. That's actually what energizes the body. And this is why people can fast for 10, 20, 30, 40 days and have more energy, more radiance, more everything than they do on food. In fact, food kind of weighs you down because it takes, like 30% of your entire energy supply to just digest a meal, right? So you can't be getting all your energy from food. It has to be from something deeper than that. So the bioenergy that is produced in your body, that's really like at the core of what is running and what's healing the system.
Light. I've been around for a little while. I've never heard that our bodies run off of light, Ronnie.
Yeah, we're light beings.
Where did you learn that?
Oh man, I think I originally got into that understanding about maybe 15 years ago, when I first went down the deep rabbit hole into all different nutritional systems, got into fasting, got into sun gazing, which is basically getting biophotonic energy from the sun. So you're looking towards the sun,
right,
when it's at its peak, and also when it's coming down at its peak of sundown. And I would do that barefoot on the ground, which is called earthing. So it creates an energetic insulation that connects you to the earth. So your electric body is connected to the resonance field of the earth. So it's basically like a battery. You're plugging your battery, and then I'm absorbing the energy, the light from the sun. And just a cool fact, your skin has more photoreceptors, meaning light receptors, than anything else it has a receptor for. So we're actually designed to absorb light.
What about the cave people, Ronnie?
I mean, that if you believe that we were cave people, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
And I'm just being facetious.
I'm not.
It's crazy.
That's a whole other podcast.
As if there's people that live in a cave right now. Sun.
That is definitely a whole other podcast, but yes.
It's so interesting because I see so many people. I see so many people that have been told, "Oh, I have an autoimmune condition. I can't heal. I'm stuck in this attachment to being sick." And what you're saying is we can literally just heal ourselves by just stripping back all the BS.
Well, our bodies are designed to heal itself. That's the whole understanding. And that's why I say bio-optimization, because it's like you're pointing out something really important. People are attached to being victims. They're attached to the sickness, the dis-ease, which is just a body and mind that's out of harmony, that's out of ease. So there's tension, there's contraction, there's attachment. No, I'm attached to the version of me that identifies with being sick because I'm getting some sort of payoff from it. And maybe the payoff is that I'm getting sympathy, I'm getting support, I'm getting what I perceive as love and care from other people. So deeply rooted in that paradigm is the virus of victimhood. And that's something as a culture, and this is not a judgment on anyone, I've had to uproot that deeply within my own psyche. And this is actually like what's going on in the world right now, is that there's just an attachment to the identity of being a victim, because it's easier to be a victim than it is to be a victor. It takes a lot more work to actually overcome something, to be a winner, to succeed.
And I think because people don't sit with themselves and actually find presence, they don't actually know what they want. So they're so bored, sadly, that actually to focus on this, like being sick, it kind of gives them a purpose. Oh, I have to go to the doctor this week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it gives you some meaning, but actually they're just bored.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a whole conversation in of itself.
Yeah.
Right? But it creates passivity. So okay, so this is actually a really interesting point. Just kind of like segueing through like this light frequency, absorbing energy. Our body is a free energy generating device. We have an infinite potential for energy and for healing, but it also requires the right mindset. It requires the right attitude and paradigm of what's possible. And when you start to open up to the possibilities that you, not only that you can heal yourself, that your body is actually designed to do that organically, naturally, it makes you kind of accountable to that.
I don't follow.
So
How? Yeah. How does it make you accountable to that?
Well, so once you become aware of something,
Yes.
you can't become unaware of it. Now that I'm aware that I actually have the potential to heal, it now confronts all the parts of me that are in opposition of that. The coping mechanisms, the junk food, the, addictions, the poor thinking, the victim paradigm. It's in direct conflict with that, right? So it actually forces you to have to do something about it.
Do you think it's, how do you, if you were to draw the cycle out on a piece of paper, where does it start? Does it start in the mind?
Well, it starts right now. It starts in the mind.
It starts as a thought.
Everything starts in the mind. Everything is mind. Yeah. The body is actually a reflection of your subconscious mind.
Right.
Yeah.
See, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
For those that are listening, would you mind repeating that? The body is a
reflection of your subconscious mind.
What else is a reflection of your subconscious mind?
I mean, you could go as far as saying everything in your reality is some sort of reflection of your subconscious mind. That's a lot for people to grok. That's a lot for people to like really comprehend. And I don't recommend people go too far out there, because all you have to do is go right here to the body. Because you if you try to access or heal the pathology of the mind through the mind, that's actually a symptom of the pathology. It's a dysfunctional process. In our culture, we're so mind. We're like neck up, right? And so we get to lower the intellectualization of things. Even though this is a very intellectual conversation, we have to start to engage with the physical body. Because how you heal the mind is actually not by being in your mind, it's by getting in your body. The mind will take care of itself if you start to take care of the physical body. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
I mean, why do you go work out?
To get my mind right. And then also impact the body.
Well, it gives the mind a focus, right?
Mm.
Like, they say like...
meditative.
What's the quote? Like, the devil's playground is an idle mind.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about people being bored, right? Like, boredom is an incubation space for not a lot of good. Let me put it that way. Not a lot of good comes out of just being in boredom. Now, creativity can come out of boredom, but you have to actually be proactive about it. You have to utilize the boredom, not just to like veg out and watch Netflix and just smoke and drink or whatever the case is. You get to feel your feelings in that space and actually decide, okay, what do I want to point my energy towards? Because the mind is a great transmission receiver for ideas, for creativity, but the body is what puts it into motion. So that's kind of what I'm saying. If you give the mind a direction, and a focus, and you move the body in that direction, all of a sudden now the mind will actually equilibrate itself. It'll actually heal itself rather quickly, or not heal itself. That's maybe not even the right word. It will reorganize itself.
Have you ever heard anything like that before? The mind can reorganize itself?
I think I've seen it in my dad, for example, got prostate cancer, didn't do any exercise. He's now kind of in remission, and he's been walking every day with the neighbor 3 times a week. They have a muster point. They go on their walk. They do 10,000 steps. They time it, and he's good. It's healing. It's moving. It gets your heart rate up.
Yep.
That's the point. Too many people are just sitting on these tablets, and it's killing people.
Yeah,
it really is.
I'm glad your dad's making a change and working on that. It's really good.
Me too.
Yeah, it's really good. So, Ronnie, last topic we're going to cover before we go down the memory lane. Yeah. And the reason I'm going to say it like this is because this healing space is fairly new to me. Been getting a taste of it for about maybe 9 months at this point, okay? And within the past 2 months or so, the word quantum, word freaking quantum has been coming up.
Yeah.
Going to the quantum, look, I watched a television show, Quantum Leap, I think, when I was a kid on the Sci-Fi Channel, all right? And then all of a sudden it pops up years later, that same word. But it's, what can you say? What can you say about that? Hocus or pocus? Fact or fiction? Yeah. What do you got for us?
So, quantum physics is the most accurate form of science that we have right now. It's the most validated, documented, I would even say empirical, and that's an interesting word to use with something like quantum, but there's so much data over the last 50, 60 years in quantum science, quantum physics. And so what does that mean in the simplest kind of explanation? So we have Newtonian physics, which is like materialistic physics. Like, okay, everything that's material, it's measurable, it abides by the 5 senses. We can taste it, we can sense it, we can touch it, we can measure it with our current measuring devices that are actually born out of that particular scientific paradigm that only cohere to that paradigm. That's all that's real. So you don't have a soul. You're just an algorithm, a computation device, and you're just a chemistry set. You don't actually have a soul. You're just a physical body. And by the way, we're going to heal the body through better ways of living through chemistry. Cut, burn, poison, which is the allopathic model of medicine, right?
Yeah.
If you have a problem with your body, it means that your body is dysfunctional, it's broken, it needs to be fixed. So we're either going to cut it open, we're going to give you some petroleum-based pills, because of course, if your body is just a chemistry set, we can just use petrochemicals, petroleum-based chemicals, i.e. pharmaceuticals. We don't need nutrients or herbs or anything, because that's all foo-foo, right? It comes from nature, that's hocus pocus. We're going to use petroleum-based chemicals to fix a chemical imbalance, or we're going to radiate some sort of cancer disease, because that makes sense. That's Newtonian physics.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. And then on the other hand, we've got
quantum physics deals both with the material, but it deals with what the 5 senses can't see, taste, touch, detect, until those senses become opened up to other sensory data, meaning people say your third eye. Let's go with intuition. Let's even go with gut instinct. Your gut instinct is like a tracking device. If you actually are in tune with your intuition or your instinct, your guttural instinct, it will feed you information that is not coherent necessarily with what's happening in the physical world. If you're doing a business deal, for example, it may look good on paper, but something inside of you is telling you, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if this is actually... Women are really in tune with this. I've heard business people talk about like where the man was about to sign the deal and the wife's like, yo, actually, this is the
conversation the other day.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
He's like, actually, I can tell he doesn't have the best intentions. He's not really about it, and I don't think you should do it. And lo and behold, I've heard examples on both sides where they did it, got screwed. Didn't do it, found out the dude was a scam artist or whatever the case was. The woman was right? So that's an example, a practical example of like a quantum phenomenon.
Way to go.
And then if you want to just take it even bigger, yeah, that's right. Tapped in, right? And the bigger kind of expanded view of quantum physics is that everything happening in our reality is all interconnected. Nothing is separate. Just like every ligament, tendon, organ, gland, muscular tissue, every complex of the body is intimately connected. And that's proven through my neuromuscular release work, for example, right? So the body is a quantum technology from that perspective. There's something, I'll end on this point. There's something called, which one do I want to go with? There's non-locality and there's entanglement. So non-locality is a principle that says, for example, you can be having a thought about somebody. You're physically here, they're across the world, and then that person calls you. Or I was just thinking about you.
Yeah.
Or you had a business idea and someone shows up and you have that conversation synchronistically. It just happened, right?
Yeah.
Right? You didn't do anything. You didn't make it happen. It just happened. That's an example of non-locality. The other one is entanglement, which is basically one and the same thing. Basically, it's that energetically everything's entangled. Human beings that are in intimate relationships that bond together create a bond. What's a bond? It's an entanglement. This can be positive or negative. We've all experienced that in intimate relationships where we form an entanglement with someone that can create positive effects in our life or can create what we perceive as toxic or negative effects in our life.
Yeah. Ronnie, have you ever gone to the quantum?
Live in the quantum.
No. That can't be true.
I mean, no, it's not. It's not.
Because I heard that if you go to the quantum, you're almost passed out.
No, that's not really what the quantum is. That so like the integration of the two.
What do you mean?
Not one is not one's better than the other. Yeah. This is actually a really important point. The being in a physical body in a physical dimension that has universal energetic principles and laws. It's the idea is that we integrate the two together, so we become fully functional in this world, right? There's people like in the conscious spiritual community that are what we might perceive as ungrounded. They're not in their body. They're always out there. They're in the astral. They're always doing medicine journeys. They're in the next ayahuasca journey, the next LSD journey, DMT, all this thing. They're obsessed with breath work, right? But they can't get their finances in order, right? They can't maintain a relationship. They can't abide by basic disciplines and follow through in the material world. Then you have people that are like hyper rigid and structured in material world, but they're completely dense. They can't tap into anything happening out of like their structured paradigm, right? So it's an integration of the two where I'm fully in my physical body. I'm fully functional. I'm like fully embodied in this body, but I can perceive beyond the five senses. I can tap into information that is non-linear, that doesn't necessarily make sense to the rational mind. Yeah.
On paper.
So it's basically being able to access a potential future and then bring it into the present moment. And then have the physical part down where I can actually do something with it.
Yeah, but what's this about going into the quantum and all of a sudden you're healed and you can walk?
I mean, what
is that?
It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon.
How do you explain that?
Well, that's exactly it. How do you explain it?
How do you explain it? You know about this stuff. I don't know about this stuff. I just learned about it today.
Yeah, the way that I would explain it just simply is that you're able to access a version of you that's whole, healed, and complete.
Yeah.
And by some sort of process that's unbeknownst to the person in the rational mind, they're able to access and embody that version of themselves that doesn't have doesn't have the split personality that's wounded, victimized, unhealed, broken. They're able to clear the floppy disk, and it clears out the trauma imprints.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually
that.
I mean, I've accessed those states many times, especially in like ayahuasca journeys. I've accessed the full spectrum, quantum, exalted states of my own being. And then I've also come right back down into the valleys of my own human messiness. So I've experienced and then my journey has been about like integrating it and balancing it out.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That reminds me of lethal. Is it Lethal Generosity? Have you read?
I've never heard that. Lethal Generosity.
Yeah. What is that?
It's a book.
Oh.
But the guy, what is his name? Michael Singer.
He wrote that book?
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
It may not be lethal. It might be another word. But basically, he sat and meditated like a hippie, a yogi, lived the lifestyle of a yogi, sat under a tree his entire life, just meditating, building software. And then one day he had this massive breakthrough and hit the quantum. And that meditative routine served him in every hardship of his life, which led to him, I think his business valued it over in the trillions.
Yeah.
Absolute legend of a man.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It's basically a non-linear, meaning like in linear, like from a business strategy perspective, you have a linear process, like this month, like the 3 months, the 6 months. This is my plan. These are our projections. These are our goals. And these are our strategies that we're going to play out every single day to lead there. And that's important. You have to have a structure, right? The mind actually needs a structure. Otherwise, you're kind of just like, what do I do today? What do I eat for breakfast? What do I do? I work out? Do I not? Right? You need to have like grounded discipline, but then there's a space that you also create for just emergent creativity. Like, okay, this is the space in my day, whether it's through meditation or it's just like going for a long walk. I do this a lot. I go for long walks around the lake to just free my mind, just let everything go and just see what comes through, what ideas come through that wouldn't come through if I was only focused on the plan. But I got the plan, so I feel secure with the plan. But I'm also open to possibilities and opportunities coming to me that are completely unpredictable and unplanned.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the times that Kaylee talks about intentionally seeking a download. Mm-hmm. But you put yourself in an environment where you're relaxed and you're open, and you might even be looking for some type of information from various sources, if not the source, right? Is that similar? What would you say?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, run with it.
Yeah, well, sometimes in some cases I've prayed and I've asked for some wisdom, and then it will just come to you. And it could be a message from someone. It could be a reel through an algorithm, which is great. Obviously, we don't want to rely on that completely. But if you're really present, there's always a message. And the synchronicity is, wow. You can't even write that stuff. If you're in alignment, and what do a lot of people say? They say God is an extension of who we are, and all the answers are within us. So, it's just like go within and just seek within yourself.
Yeah, would you say that, because I talked about this whole like expanding your field of awareness. So when you expand your field of awareness, you become aware of more things. And this can work positive or negative. When you become aware of trauma, sometimes the tendency could be like, oh, now that I'm aware of trauma, my whole mission is to heal my trauma. But the more you look for something, the more you find it, because you're actively looking for the thing, the more that your filter will actually perceive more of that. That could be a downward spiral.
Yeah.
Also, the more aware you become of magic and miracles, the more you're looking for that, all of a sudden, the more you start to find that. And I'm curious what your thought on that was.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we JP and we opened a fridge and it was just filled with beautiful fresh fruit and juices. And someone said, can we have one of those? And he said, of course we can. It's abundance. And honestly, ever since that day, I've just looked at everything as abundance. And money, for example, which everyone chases, or most people do, it's just an energy. So, it's just really opening yourself up to abundance and serving in your higher self so that it continuously flows. Yeah.
Yeah. Power of the mind.
The mind.
And you said synchronization. Something. A lot of.
So use the word synchronicity. Was that
synchronicity?
So synchronicity is this idea of, unplanned miracles. It's actually this idea of entanglement where like you'll start to see certain numbers like 111, 222, like and you think like, oh, whatever, that's no big deal. But then in my world, I see that at least 10 times a day in different configurations, and it's always in these unplanned moments. And there's sometimes something going on, and then it shows up, and it's like, whoa. And then I'll see it somewhere else. Like I've had it where I've seen it here, and because I'm paying attention to it, all of a sudden I see it on another clock, and then I see it on a clock that's actually not working, but it's actually that number where that's not the time. But now it's like, oh, it's 555. I'm like, so the synchronicity is a synchronization of the magic that is this reality.
And then a mutual friend of ours used a term that I was quite unfamiliar with. He said that he operates off of his synchronometer, which is not the clock. It's your internal clock,
right?
Which means you're essentially going with the flow.
Okay, yeah.
Right now,
yeah,
would you say that when you're operating off of that's when more of these types of things happen?
So totally. I mean again, that's actually how we're designed to operate.
Because you're open.
Yes.
Your head's not on the ground. Oh, I've got to meet this deadline. I've got to do this,
right?
And think logically. You're open to it. Mm.
It's having more time to play. That's kind of what we forget to do. It's just like sit behind a desk.
Wow. Wow. Oh, this is some good stuff. This is really good. It's really thought-provoking conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This is big.
This is amazing.
Well, it's time to hop on the school bus.
Okay.
Ronnie. Yeah.
Glad we got all that out of the way.
Holy smokes. That's only the intro. It's great. Ryan, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Northern California in a little town called Moraga, which was 20 minutes away from Oakland in San Francisco. So I lived between this town, Moraga. I lived quite a bit in Oakland, went back and forth with San Francisco, Berkeley.
Why the back and forth?
Oh, I mean, I just, I would just go back and forth because that was like the area where more was happening.
Okay.
And I was also playing basketball in my teenage and young adult years. So I'd train at a gym in Oakland, and I spent a lot of time in that area, kind of like in the urban setup. I was really influenced by basketball, martial arts, and hip-hop culture. That was kind of the three predominant cultural influences for me growing up.
Yeah. Who's your favorite rapper?
Nas.
Okay.
I know I can be what I want to be.
Yes.
If you work hard at it.
That's not even questionable.
I'll be where I want to be.
I love
Be boys
Nas.
and girls. Yeah.
I know I can.
I saw him in Busta Rhymes at Circuit of the Americas.
Whoa.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago. It was sick. Yep. I went by myself, dude.
I'd go by myself. Why not?
I just had to throw it back. I was like, these guys grew up with those guys too.
Yeah.
And so how long did you live in your first house?
From the age of 3, I guess, into about 17.
3 to 17, you were in the same house. And you said your father was not in the picture.
Yep.
Where have you ever met him?
I met him once.
How old were you when you met him?
I think I was 12 or 13. Yeah.
Is he still alive?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Not sure.
No.
Very good.
That's I don't know. And that's a whole thing too, like not having a father in your life. And it's interesting because, there was no trauma around it. Like I sussed that out to figure that out. I realized like that was just my normal.
Right.
I didn't have
really
a reference for that, where some kids would be they would have real trauma from a divorce or they're splitting. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't. It was actually when I was 11, I saw one of my friends get picked up by his dad, and it just kind of was like, it was like such an obvious thing. I knew people had dads.
Yeah.
But then I saw that and something clicked. And I was like, oh, what?
Where's mine?
Yeah. And then I went to my mom and I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this? And she's like, oh, it was like never talked about.
Huh.
It was never actually talked about.
Wow.
Which is actually a lot of what, when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, there was a lot of stuff that was never actually, I never had a father. A father would sit you down and talk to you about things and explain the ways that the world works and how to, I did have my grandfather, luckily, who filled that role.
Where do you live?
I can't remember.
Close?
Like about 2 hours away,
Okay.
but he would come visit once a month. So he did play that role. I did have a really solid, integral, loving, masculine presence for about a week out of every month. But yeah, I never had that kind of tutelage. But luckily, I had martial arts that gave me enough of that structure. But just as a young boy on his own, surrounded by women, a lot of that,
my mom,
my grandmother,
and your grandma.
yeah, my grandmother, and there's a lot going on in that house. There was a lot of pushback, but always a lot of love.
Let's talk about that for a second. So you're in elementary school.
Yeah.
Taking the school bus.
No, actually, I
How'd you get to
walked.
school?
I walked to
You walked.
school because it was about 5 minutes away. So
Okay.
I would walk
Yeah.
up the little trail down the way.
Nice.
Mhm.
So you're about you get your backpack on. You're walking back home to school.
Yep.
What kind of feeling did you typically get when you're about to go in? Put yourself back in that place.
Where I'm going back home.
Yeah, in your elementary school. You open the door. There's your mom. There's your grandma. What was that like?
Hard to say, really. I don't have any feelings around it. I mean, I was perceived as like a problem child.
How come?
I had a lot of energy. I didn't have a father to sit me down and tell you that give boundaries and reparations and like cause and effect and
What did you do?
consequences. I mean, I got kicked out of the first grade.
Why?
Apparently, I hit someone. Now I say apparently because in the 7th grade, that kid came up to me and told me that. I had a blank. This is what's trippy about it. I actually didn't remember that. And the 2 other people came up to me and told me the same thing. And I was like, what?
Do you remember?
I didn't remember like hitting this kid, like punching them or something. So there's actually a segment of my childhood that is kind of a blur. Like I can remember different things, but like the full felt sense, like I remember. So like, in other words, I wasn't a problem child. I just didn't have proper boundaries and structure in my life. So I had to figure it out. I had to figure out what to do with this energy. I had to figure out what to do with this anger that was inside of me.
You had anger.
Oh, yeah.
Why were you angry?
Great question. I don't know.
You were just angry.
I mean, sometimes, not all the time.
You acted out on it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes.
Other than punching the kid in the house, did you do it?
Well, eventually I landed on basketball.
Yep.
And that was my first, like, really, like, reprieve and talking about, like, giving the mind direction. Once I had basketball, then I had a ball that I could actually symbiotically imbue as, like, a training partner, right? And it was, like, kind of like my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd walk back home with my basketball, dribbling, and just like that kind of kid. And, that little, like, stories you hear about NBA players where they had their basketball as a kid and they're going to school dribbling. It's like their best
Your
friend.
Converses.
Yeah, that was literally like my little.
Nos.
I mean, it's 7th grade. 7th grade, that came when I heard Nas on the radio in 7th grade, and then it clicked. I was like, oh, whoa, what's this? So yeah.
Cool. So, you said there was a lot of pushback in the house. Was that during your elementary years?
I mean, it was actually all throughout my formative years.
All throughout them. What did that look like?
My mom attempting to play both roles,
Yeah.
and not knowing how. Me not fully respecting her because she wasn't my father. And also knowing that I didn't have a father, and knowing that on some level I had a little bit of leverage because I knew that I was a little bit disfortunate, right? I knew that. So there were times where I would kind of leverage that because I also felt like there was something I wasn't getting. So when I was being like, yelled at or reprimanded, I kind of would like lean into that. And then there would be some pushback, you know. There's many stories, but we get back and forth into it quite a bit. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that listen to this that have experienced something similar. Well, they grew up with that father. Yeah. Or they don't have a dad. They're younger and they don't have a dad right now.
Or the father is not a proper role model.
Right.
Is actually a warning of what not to be. So I was actually fortunate in that way. I never looked at it like, woe is me. Never once. It was just what it was. But I realized that my father was not capable. He wasn't a bad person by any means. I actually had a lot of compassion and sadness for him. The fact that like, wow, you could have at this time, you know, a 34-year-old son in the world and not know where he is. Like you're at death's door right now. You have to be. And like, what's going through your mind? What's going through your consciousness? Like, how do you live with that? I have no idea. I don't know. Right. I don't know how you could. So I just realized like he would have been too weak of a presence in my life. It actually would have caused more trauma that I would have had to deal with. So it actually was a blessing in a sense, even though it wasn't ideal.
So you're going through elementary school. You had a lot of energy.
I had a lot of energy.
You didn't really know how to displace it. You probably looked for the wrong kind of attention at times. Happens to the best of us. Believe me, I know. And then you get into middle school, right? This is a really pivotal time in a lot of kids' lives. Totally. Talked a little about this yesterday. The hormones are running rampant and things are changing, and you might have seen a girl over there, and you're like, who's that? Anyways, things happen. So tell us a little about your experience in middle school. What was it like for you in your environment?
I mean, it was just like a coming of age, you know, transition window. And before high school, it's like you're figuring out who you are relative to your social environment. You're starting to get a sense of yourself. I felt more like teenager. Like, okay, this is like what high school is going to model. Like going to my classes, there's a structure here. This is what the big kids, like I felt like a big kid. I felt like, cool, I'm coming into my own. Now I can try out for basketball. I can try out for the sports team. I can talk to girls. There's more of a social dynamic. We go to like birthday parties, you know, all that kind of stuff that made me feel more adult. Like I felt like I was now more of my own person.
What did it mean to you to feel that way?
Good question. I mean, back then it was what it was. It was a developmental process, like for all of us. You know, I'm more individuated. I can make my own decisions. And I'm also I have a lot of leeway at home because I don't have the full supervision, which I was already used to. So like a lot of my time was spent outside of school. A lot of my time was spent either working out, playing basketball, BMXing. I was really into BMXing and skateboarding. You know, we'd be out in the shopping market with our candle or like big candle wicks, and we'd be
your board, waxing your boards,
waxing the corners of the curb so we could do skateboard maneuvers on the curbs with the wax, and then we get yelled at by the shopping, you know, the people own the stores.
NorCal life.
Yeah, NorCal life. That's right, and that's how I spent a lot of my time. And then eventually, when I got really serious about my training and competing, I would be literally running 3 to 5 miles from my house all the way to the shopping center and, you know, play video games, hang out with friends, and then I would jog back. So those two worlds started to integrate quite a bit.
Yeah. What roadblocks did you find yourself running into? What stands out to you the most of your middle school experience?
It's a good question. I can't really... I mean, maybe like social dynamics.
Yeah.
I think, I like feeling like I didn't fully fit in. I had a lot of different circles of friends, but I wasn't an integral piece in any one of them. So a lot of kids are like, they have their clique and their posse. Like I would float between different groups of people, but I never felt like I was like ever anchored fully in one, which explains my makeup. I still don't feel that now. Like, I have core friends, but I don't just like, these are my people, this is my tribe, this is my like clique. I mix with a lot of different people, which is also a piece of my success. It's why I have hundreds of podcast interviews with people like from full spectrum. It's why I can speak to so many dimensions of life or holistic healing or personal development, because I'm interested in the full spectrum of life. And I think I've always been like that. So that when it comes to people, you know, I just kind of float in and out of different circles and dynamics. But I think when I was younger, I felt like misunderstood, and I didn't feel like I fully belonged. So there was a little bit of awkwardness, but I also would always face my awkwardness of like, you know, those pivotal moments of like asking the girl out. There was like this big whole thing of like, oh, you're going to ask Julia out. And then it becomes a whole thing, gets around school. So now I'm like, there's pressure, and she knows I'm about to ask her out. She's sitting right there, and I'm like, and then finally I sit down. It's this whole thing, and I stumble over my words, and she's like, yeah, no thanks. I'm like, you know, it's like,
Julia's missing out.
She definitely missed out. For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. But, you know, but those, you know, those moments.
Yeah.
If you want to go into, you know,
typical stuff.
Typical stuff. Aside from that, I feel like what the real life stuff, as challenging as life was at times, I knew how to handle it. I was way ahead of, when I really think about it, maturity-wise, I was way ahead of the curve.
Where'd that come from?
That it came from being self-reliant.
Why'd you have to be so self-reliant?
Didn't have a father.
But your mom was around all the time.
Doesn't mean she was around.
So what you're saying is there's without a doubt a missing piece of somebody's race.
I mean, in a human interpretation, yeah.
Yes.
But in the perfect design of my life, like I developed a certain level of self-security, even though there was like quote unquote insecurity, right? But I'd always find a way to work through it. I'd always meet the challenge. When things would happen, there was a death, there was like, you know, a real life situation. Those were the times I was actually the calmest. It was only the times when I felt insecure, or times where I felt awkward or misunderstood, or I'd act immature, was actually only when I was trying to be something other than I was. When I was actually just being me, no problem.
Was that a common thing to try to not be who you were?
I think it's common. I think it's common for all of us.
Yeah.
Right. We're trying to fit into the mold. We're trying to find out where we fit. We're trying to seek approval especially you get into 6th grade. It's like, okay, where do I fit? Where's my clique? I need to find my tribe. Because I need to see where I fit in, and I need to see where the vantage point and the advantage is with who I'm connected to. I think that's common for everyone.
Any so no earthquaking moments in the middle school era?
I mean, not that I can remember. I mean, I'm sure there probably were, but my life was an earthquake.
You never got arrested for spray painting in the hills of California?
No, I've gotten arrested a number of times. That's what I mean when I say, like, it's hard to access particular moments because there was so many.
Serious.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
we only need to highlight a few because
my dealings with the cops growing up. Oh, I had plenty of run-ins with the cops growing up.
Which one stands out to you the most, Ronnie?
Well, there was this kid, Andrew Chin, who was kind of like one of my good friends at the time. We were both mischievous. He was this Korean kid, and we're both like rebels, troublemakers. So when we sync up, we'd kind of like sync up over this kind of like this thing.
Let's go do bad stuff, bro.
We do some ridiculous stuff. One time, we basically let off a bunch of firecrackers in the back. Actually, this is an interesting point. We let off a bunch of firecrackers in the back of the shopping market. The cops come. He runs. And he's like, dude, come on. And for some reason, I didn't run. When the cop's like, hey, get over here. I could have just ran and been. I was faster than he was. I was faster than everyone. For some reason, I just stood there. And the cop came up to me. And then he's like, I was honest with him. And then I show up at Andrew's doorstep. And Andrew opens the door. He's like, and the cop's there. And that kind of severed our relationship. But I actually just told him the truth. Now, in retrospect, yeah, I could have just ran and been out, like, probably would have just done that if I went back to it.
Yeah.
But it was just an interesting moment of like, I actually was just like, yeah, this is what happened. This is what the deal was. And I have plenty of other moments where I did run and get away.
Now, Ronnie, you said it happened all the time. It was a frequent occurrence, getting in trouble type of thing.
I mean, it was not all the time.
Well, more than the average, perhaps.
It filled in the space.
Yes.
I wasn't into doing homework, let's say that. So I need to find other curricular activities.
Okay, like waxing curbs.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's right.
And
That's funny.
so the driver of this, would you say that the sole driver of this radical behavior was based off of one factor, the fact that you didn't have the direction of a father? Or was there something else?
No, I mean, it was definitely that. And let's take the father piece out of it.
Yes.
But like, it was definitely that. I'll give you a pivotal moment that you're looking for. I'll give you the pivotal moment. The pivotal moment in my entire life timeline was when I was about 15 or 16. So
You were in middle school?
no, high school.
Oh,
A
high school.
sophomore in high school.
Oh,
Now, I'd been kicked out of 3 schools
serious?
for fighting.
Okay.
Nothing extreme. Just just got into it with people,
Yeah.
or they get into it with me, because I was also a martial artist, and it was kind of a thing, but I kind of kept it quiet, and because I wasn't fully into competition yet. This was about to happen,
Yeah.
but it hadn't fully clicked. So I'm running on the track. Now, I'm not competing in martial arts yet. I hadn't fully, really know my value to really commit myself. So it's kind of a double life. And so during recess, I would train. This is what I would do. Work out, I'd run the track, whatever. One day I'm running the track, and all of a sudden I stop, and it was like a lightning bolt hit me. And there was this audible voice that was not my voice. And it said, "Do you think you're going to live forever?" And it was like, and I got the whole vision, the whole thing. This has happened to me many times. This is how my books happen. I get 10-second vision. The whole thing comes through. And I saw my whole life. I saw myself competing in the Olympics. I saw myself at this just higher version of myself that I always knew was there. And then the next day, I drop everything. Smoking weed, drinking, hanging out with my friends, all that BS that I was just filling in the space with. And the next day I show up in the dojo. I sign up like, yo, this is what I want to do. I've been doing martial arts my whole life, but I haven't had it really structured. This is where I come from. This is what I want to do. Immediately, I go into full training. I'm literally cleaning the dojo before class, like full-on apprenticeship. And then all day, there's like 4 classes. I'm training every single class and before the adult class. So I'm training, and then we come to the adult class, sparring every day, Monday to Friday, for the next however many years. That timeline shift happened in that moment. Yeah.
You heard a voice. A lightning bolt hit you, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. It was somatic.
You chose to listen.
It halted me for sure.
And
But it gave me the opportunity. I could have not. But it stopped me to get my attention. And it gave me the gift of like, yo, this is what your life could be. And I was like, so it gave me the confidence. It gave me the sense of like, oh, I can actually do this. I don't have to live this mediocre life.
It woke you up.
Yeah, because I think I was trying to escape that too. But that was just what was going on around me. So I think part of me was actually trying to escape out of this mediocrity that I was entertaining.
At a young age, right?
16.
16. What else shifted for you? What else did you notice once you started adopting more the martial arts lifestyle?
When I went down that...
Yeah.
I mean, I just saw it as completely useless. Because what also happened through my training, through my discipline, I excelled extremely quickly. Because now all that energy is being redirected. I'm excelling extremely quickly. I'm quickly becoming better than every single other person in the school. And I just got it. I was like, oh, this is what it is. Like my life, we're all just basically, when I say we, I mean like all my contemporaries, my peers, people, and like I just saw everything differently. It's like, oh, people are just settling for mediocrity. People just aren't trying. And a lot of my friends, people that I was really good friends with, you know, like with good hearts, just smoking blunts and weed every day and the bongs and the cigarettes and the drinking. And like I would kind of like hang with them, take a few hits, and then I'd go back to the gym and use that until eventually I was like, I don't even do that anymore. This sense that anything is possible took over. And I realized and I got deep into personal development work. I'd listen to Anthony Robbins. I'd read books from Lance Armstrong and Michael Jordan, and really try to construct this professional athlete lifestyle. And that gave me the self-created structure to start abiding by, so I could start developing this vehicle, this path. And I really just could see like this is very binary. It's like black and white. Yeah. Like there's no gray zone here.
I'm sure that your mother gave you some wisdom along the way.
For sure, yeah.
What stands out to you as far as some valuable things that she's taught you?
I think a lot of what I got from my mom. Okay, yeah, and I won't go too deep into my mom. I love my mom, and she has her own special, challenges that we had to wrestle with quite a bit. The really positive things that I got from her is her entrepreneurial spirit. Like she was constantly starting businesses and, opened up many computer stores.
Yeah.
She actually was the mayor for our town in Moraga at one point, just because she's just decided she wanted to. And then she's like, one story, like me and my friends are in her van. Yeah. And this is like, we're doing shenanigans, right? And so like, this is like our bonding, I guess. We would literally drive up to the other campaign opponents, like their little promo. Their sign, take out their sign and then plug hers in. And then so we could have this like shared bonding mischievous experience.
Yeah, she knew you'd get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah, and she was like, all right, cool, yeah, no worries. And she
like
became the mayor.
Yeah.
And everyone was completely like, they were like Ronnie's mom, what?
That's amazing. It was woman power.
Yeah, and she would also she got me into refereeing basketball, because when I was playing summer basketball leagues, she would actually be organizing all the referees. So she was handling all them, and then eventually during the summer I would referee elementary and high school basketball, and that was my first job. And so I'd get paid $10 a basketball game. Then I could play basketball. So it actually, when I think about it, there was this really unique element of being in this really positive environment from what before was just a lot of chaos.
Yeah, structure.
Yeah,
structure. Do you think everybody needs that?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's critical. Yeah, it's absolutely key.
Yeah, I remember pre-military, I was never good at school as far as getting reasonable grades and being focused. And then post-military, I was on the dean's list every semester and just crushed it. Dude, I could sit and read a book nonstop, start to finish.
Interesting.
Yeah. Very quick change.
I think that's linked to roots, having roots, would you say?
Roots, having, what do you mean by that?
Just groundedness and roots to where you come from and what you associate to as a sense of belonging, home.
I mean, that definitely is the advantage people have when they have a solid family nucleus. They have that ahead of time. That I didn't have that, so I had to create my own roots. I had to root in to myself.
Yeah. Root into yourself. Yeah. Well said, Ronnie. You're doing a lot of stuff. Okay. You're very focused and you put in 110% into anything that you do. It's clear to see that, right? Martial artist, you excelled at a rapid rate. You became one of the best in the class, if not the best, right? You're well educated. So if there's a topic that you enjoy, it seems like you will read every single book there is on that topic. Is that safe to say, more or less?
For sure. Because I love learning.
You love learning.
Right. But I'm self-educated.
Yeah.
right? Like the, higher education or the academia. Like I didn't do very well in school, not because I wasn't capable. I kind of just had the sense, even in high school, that this was pointless.
Dumb, right?
I didn't have the trajectory of like, oh, I'm going to college and all this. Actually, sports was the only anchor for me. And the fact that like at some point I realized I need to get the hell out of here, so I need to actually like buckle down. And like I like for 6 months I just buckled down to get out. Funny story, I used to doodle on the SATs. Like everybody else, this is the most serious thing in the world, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's taking this.
deal.
I literally would draw a design, and then I would just hope that would get me a C. I failed every time, but that's how detached I didn't have it imposed upon me because I didn't have a father. I mean, my mother, it just wasn't a thing. I don't know how to explain it. I had no reverence for it. I didn't see myself going through the academic, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad certainly was the one bringing my report card at home, looking at all the circled zeros and grounding me. And yeah, I can see what you mean if you don't have that.
You got zeros?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get a zero?
I just didn't want to learn, and I didn't feel that my brain could learn the night before. And it was 3 years worth of work, and you had to sit there and try and study. And I just wanted to connect and network and build relationships. I didn't want to. My theory was not sitting learning. So boring.
You gotta want it, right?
And it has to be something you're interested in, right? You have to see, like you said, self-learn. You find what.
When I was into something, I excelled.
And that's the flaw with the public school system, hands down.
Totally.
Putting so much time.
Well, that's so much that's the entrepreneurial phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right. So many would then become successful entrepreneurs couldn't stand school.
Right.
They're like the worst students, but then you turn them on to something that actually makes sense to them, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, like Thomas said, dropped out of school in middle school or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's countless stories like that. Some of the most successful people in history barely passed high school.
Yeah, and I was at school and I think we had chocolate molds, so I made chocolate, wrapped them up in nice bags and sold them and made money. 8 years old. That was interesting.
You still got that recipe?
Just a mold and melted chocolate and a little bit of marketing and a smile. Everything is just marketing. It's nothing too special.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. So you still got a lot of energy, Ronnie.
Yeah.
You're an energetic guy. What's the mission here?
Well, I have a lot of energy because I want to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And why is that?
Because I'm here.
Okay.
Like I want to maximize this thing. I want to live as long as I can organically live. But I'm here for this thing. I'm here for the whole experience. And I am on a mission. Like I am driven by a mission.
Tell us about that.
I mean, it's taken different shapes and forms. The mission on a personal level is to continue to evolve and develop into the best version of me, which just means to access greater and greater degrees of my own potential. And that's unique to me.
Let's peel it back a little bit. Why do that?
What else am I going to do here?
What else are you going to do? Well, let's why though? Why?
Because to me and my makeup and the experience that I've had up to this point, it's the only thing that makes sense to me to do with my time. And the other thing is because if I don't, there's countless other individuals that will not be blessed and gifted that actually need that. They need the gifts that we have that are only going to come through the excavation of us digging deep inside of ourselves and alchemizing whatever lived experiences that we have as a gift to contribute to the world. There's people that really actually need help. And so I have unique skill sets and unique perspectives and a unique way of delivering them that is going to serve, that has served and will continue to serve many people that actually really need help and they need inspiration and they need role models to help ignite that spark within them that I did when I was a kid. And so it's paying it forward on one sense, and it's also just the way I'm designed. You know, like I don't want to waste time. I do believe that I'm a child of God. Therefore, I want to make my heavenly Father, Mother, however you want to think of it, proud. And I don't know the full mystery of this experience. And I don't need to fully know it. I feel it. I feel that this moment in time is the most important time in our history. I feel like we're in a major transition point in our world, and it requires each one of us awakening to something deeper than the materialistic agenda that's been thrust upon us. And it also requires us to be fully integrated and functional in the material world so that we can give our gifts in a way that supports ourselves, our families, our communities, everyone involved. We live in the most unique time. We have more abundance available to us in any category than the pharaohs and royalty of the past could ever conceive of. So I don't want to squander it. I want to make use of it. And by the way, it's the most entertaining thing I could possibly do. People are out there playing video games all day long. This reality is a video game. This reality is a complete show.
Well,
like I want to be in the game.
Yeah, that's precisely why I don't play video games. It seems like such a freaking waste of time.
Well, I met a girl on the airplane that met a guy playing Call of Duty, and now they're getting married. She lived in South Africa. He lived in Texas or Austin. So just saying,
first sight.
Sometimes you got to just follow whatever suits you. No judgment.
Yeah, do your thing. I'm just telling you where I'm at with it.
Same here.
Okay.
So there.
Good.
Jeez.
Yeah, enjoy your video game. I'm just telling you, there's a whole other show happening. There's a whole other reality happening.
Yeah.
And if you apply yourself even just a little bit, man, your reality can get so much more interesting.
Yeah.
So you want to help people.
Yeah, it's the way I'm wired.
You're wired to help people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kaylee just picked up your book.
Yeah, wondering. I have a friends suffering with with this, and just last week relapsed again. So, what inspired you? Like, how did this come? Obviously, how did you channel this?
Yeah, I mean that was another one of those moments where I just really got this whole flash of vision. I was actually working on a different book. And then that one came through, and it was so clear and obvious that this was actually what needed to happen. And, you know, I've had my own journey with addiction, like most of us have. And so this book was actually something I wrote for myself. And it just became a whole other thing. You know, this is my 8th book that I've produced.
What do you mean you had a journey with addiction?
Well, we've all had it. We all have or have our own addictions, coping mechanisms.
We're all addicted to something.
What kind of legacy would you want to leave the world with? People remember you.
It's a big question. I don't know how to answer that yet. It's an interesting one. I mean, I want my life and my example on this earth to be one that is an example to follow, an example to emulate, in the sense that people can take from my life and my teachings and my, whatever it is that I leave behind, as something that they can initiate themselves into their own version of greatness. You know, my pursuit towards greatness, my pursuit towards my own human potential, with heart, with soul. Not just for my own means, not just because I'm self-centered and I just want to like push this thing and see what I can do and what I can get. It's aligned with heart and humanity. Like, I'm actually here for humanity. I'm here for a purpose that's beyond me, but it's dependent on me, meaning that I have to take absolute care of myself. That's what I want to get across to people, is that in your pursuit of your own potential and the things you want to do in life, you also have to take great care of yourself too, because you're an integral part of that process. And that's kind of a new message that's starting to come out in the transformational personal development space, where people are starting to realize that they can't just martyr themselves or burn themselves out because they want to achieve all these goals that all these gurus say that we need. And then I've tracked these gurus. I've tracked a lot of these people who are now in their 50s and 60s, but they were the main guys back in the day. Most of them ain't looking that good. They got all the money, but I would not trade my bill of health for all the money in the world.
Dude, you ever seen John Maxwell hop in a pool without a shirt on?
I love John Maxwell. I think he's amazing, but yes,
But it's health is your wealth, right?
That's right. Or like like Les Brown. Les Brown, I love Les Brown. I think he's one of the most incredible motivational speakers of all time. But bro, dude, with all that wisdom, all that money, how do you let yourself go like that? I don't understand it. I've been so broke. I've been so in the deficit. And I have spent the last bit of bucks that I had on organic food, because that's my value. That's my value system. I will not compromise on that, because I know that if I do that, I'm compromising on myself. I'm telling God, nope, actually, I'm willing to compromise on the thing that is most important to me. Just won't do it.
Hold that thought. It's so funny. Okay. And we're off.
Yeah, it's health is your wealth, because once you have, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're sick, what do you do?
If I can make that like kind of a main header in my legacy, that would be it. Like, health is wealth.
What's something that you believe in so passionately that that you would die to defend it?
I mean, I would die to defend that health is your wealth. I mean, if it came down to it.
Yeah.
Sovereignty. Like, that every human being is sovereign, that your sovereignty, your agency, and your freedom to move and be and do and have whatever is intrinsically true to you must be protected and must be preserved against all opposing odds. And that's what we're seeing in our world right now. That's the big kind of whatever you want to call it, the big mission in the world right now, especially in like the freedom movement, the political movement, but way beyond that, right? It's like spiritual sovereignty. And so the institutions that oppose freedom are pushing on every possible way that we have our freedom, whether it's freedom of food, it's freedom of medical therapies, of somebody's own volition, somebody's own choice of the therapies and modalities and treatments that they want to choose for themselves. And it goes on and on and on. So I'd say, like, sovereignty, agency, and freedom cannot be compromised and cannot be bought or sold. That must be protected completely.
Yeah, you can sense the conviction when you talk about that. Yeah, very good. We're gonna play a little. We're gonna spice it up a little bit here. We played this last night with our guest. We're gonna hit you with some rapid fire questions, Ronnie. We're gonna fluff it up a little bit here. Okay, we got pretty intense there for a little bit. Oh my gosh, holy smokes! Somebody put a fan on me. Yeehaw! Here we go. So I want to hit you with some fun stuff, right? Get to know the lighter side of Ronnie here, and we're gonna just hit you with some questions. Ready? You want to go first?
You can go first.
I'll go first.
I'm shy.
All right. So, Mr. Ronnie, what's your favorite date spot in Austin?
Date spot.
Yeah.
Barton Springs is a good one.
Okay. Barton Springs.
Barton Springs.
Now you only get one. Ready to go.
Ronnie, do you have children, or do you want to be a father?
I don't have any children, and I'm not attached. I know that if it happens, it'll be the most amazing thing ever. If it doesn't happen, I believe I will be totally content just pursuing my mission.
What's your favorite movie?
The Last Samurai.
Nice.
Ronnie, what would you say, looking at where you are now, what is the one thing you would say to your younger self?
Mm-hmm. Slow down while speeding up.
I'm going to, after we stop recording, I'm going to think about that one. That's good. 2 more questions. Who's somebody that is alive that you want to have a conversation with that you haven't been able to talk to yet?
That's a good one. One person?
One person. Joe Dispenza.
JFK Jr., if he is indeed still alive.
You don't think that's him?
Wow.
But JFK Jr. is the son of JFK, the former president in the 70s.
Yeah.
And my belief and conviction is that he actually still is alive. That's a whole other rabbit hole. So if that is the case, he's the number one person I want to talk to.
All right, we'll keep an ear to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Last one.
Ronnie, one more question. What is a tool that you use to channel your intuition?
Breathing.
Breathing.
Breathing. On that note, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Ronnie, how do people get a hold of you?
You can go to my website. It's, I don't know when this is going to be launched, but the rebrand is going to be ronnielandis.com.
Yeah.
So that should be up in a month or so from now.
Cool.
You can go to my podcast. It's called The Life Mastery Show. Go on iTunes or Spotify. You can find me on Instagram. Pretty easy to track down.
Instagram? What do they type in?
Ronnie Landis.
Wow.
If somebody really wants to find me, they will find me.
Gonna find you.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. Greg Carlson, Kaylee Bendel, and Ronnie Landis. Till next time, Austin, stay fired up. Cheers.